dead date that you would push back to?
Not on July 15th, there's not a drop dead date.
But have you considered that option at all, that you might have to push the start back?
With the climate we have now, we don't feel we have to do that, but when that information comes forward, we would look at it. So, but if you're asking me for a date today, Pat, I can't give you one.
No, the only reason I asked is that I thought I saw you say earlier that October 1st would be like the latest possible day you could start fall sports.
No, I think a lot of you may have seen an article with Pennsylvania Football News, and I think the question that Billy posed to me was, would you hold as far as October? And I said, sure, we would go week to week. We would go to the first week of October. There's a lot of things we're willing to do. I think you heard loud and clear from the board, the philosophy is we're going to make our best efforts to get whatever we can, as much as we can, for every student athlete in this state so they could participate in athletics this school year. We want kids to be kids, and we want them to get the experience of playing athletics. And we're going to do whatever we can by working through the framework given from the governor, the Department of Ed, the Department of Health to do that.
Thanks, Bob.
Hey, Bob, Bob Capasso from Blue Ridge. Can you just kind of reiterate, the board stance on, getting going on time and being still on the timetable?
We're still on the timetable because we have not seen a large spike of shutdown of our student athletes on their school campuses. We have seen some pocketed things, but we believe most of our schools are doing an outstanding job with their health and safety programs, and they're monitoring their student athletes. And we felt on July 15th, we still have time to make an analysis as we go forward. Therefore, you've seen what the board discussed about having another board meeting here towards the end of July. Obviously, that will be to review any changes that come forward, like one that came forward this afternoon that was kind of a surprise about limiting inside to 25 people. So that certainly may have got people's attention for indoor activities, but it's not, you can't host indoor activities. So we can still work with that, and I think our coaches can work with that and still get good out-of-season workouts for student athletes.
Bob, regarding the 25-person limit indoors, what's your understanding in terms of something like volleyball? Do the players and teams count in that number? Because obviously you couldn't fit two teams in.
Well, yeah, Mike, I think it is. I think that's how restrictive it is from the governor's office. And I don't think that they really considered competitive sports in it. However, 25 is doable because you could take a team of 10 and 10 and get a workout in, because you're going to need some officials, and maybe you're not going to need officials if it's a scrimmage situation. Just have 11 and 11 and your two coaches. There's 24. So it's doable.
Bob, Mark Bertig, Brenda Broadcasting, Indiana, Pennsylvania. Obviously, here in IUP land, PSAC sent shockwaves throughout the state today. Would you agree that the dynamics with NCAA Division II vary greatly from what you're looking at with high school football, because players at the D2 level are obviously coming in from across the country, not to mention the travel's a lot different out of county? And second question, just to roll into the dynamics of COVID-19 varying greatly from urban areas, such as Philadelphia or Pittsburgh region, to rural counties like we operate in. So would the PIAA take a kind of look at things differently across various regions, rural counties included, or take a one-size-fits-all approach?
Let me try to answer them if I got them with my feeble mind, Mark. I think the first one that you are correct. We are different than college athletics. Student athletes at the collegiate level are not adolescents. They're adults, and they're traveling from all over the country. And in some cases, some sports, if you go back to the old days when I was there, we had an awful lot of soccer players that came from the island. So they may be coming from places throughout the world, as well as not only where they're coming from, but the travel and getting there with the way they get there. That has, I think, had some of the college conferences concerned. But the other part of it, yes, our state is quite diverse. I think it's almost 75% rural, but our board has said we're willing to get as much as we possibly can where we can get it. So if one area of the state could possibly play 75% of a schedule and the other part of the state could only play 25%, the board's okay with that, because we want kids to get as much as they possibly can where they can. And then the questions that have to be discussed then later are you going to look at postseason? Is it going to end at the regular season? Is it going to end at the district level? You're going to have regionals. Those questions are questions to be answered in the future. And the reason being is we still have time to do that. We're keeping this a little bit fluid because we've seen people step out in other states and put in plans and then get them blown up because of actions from other departments that they have no control over and that really have the best information available. And our government agencies right now, the Department of Health, Department of Ed, have those keys. So we'll follow their leads with the government.
Thank you, Bob.
Mark, did I get them right?
You got them right, and you're through all of this, your hair is turning gray.
Dr. Lombardi, if I could ask just a couple questions. You addressed mine district by district question, but I was hoping you could address maybe some of the rumors that parents are spreading around that state playoffs have been canceled and those discussions have been made. Can you just address those rumors for us?
Would you be kind enough to tell me who's passing those rumors? Because I would like to personally drive to their homes and punch them in the nose. State playoffs are not canceled, period.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of phone calls.
State playoffs are on the books. We're trying to do our darndest to advance through that. Again, it's a little premature in July to make a decision about December, but we are planning to have postseason as we sit here and speak today.
Thank you. I've been talking to a couple athletic directors who are concerned just as they move towards the season. They're not getting thermometers as fast as they would like. They're struggling to get the things they need to have large-scale competition in the fall with multiple teams practicing at the same time. Have districts or the PIAA thought about how to best support those schools in those efforts?
They're local school decisions, and they'll have to be made and handled by them. That is the first time I've heard that, Allie.
Okay, it was a week ago, so possibly things have changed.
I have not heard that, and most of our folks have said they, with their health and safety plan, the way that they put it in a progressive level, that a lot of them were set up in a systematic process to handle that. That's the first I heard of it, but you know, I'm sure it's out there.
And then my last question for you, you guys mentioned that there are concerns amongst officials of attending in-person meetings for rules and things of that nature. There are more officials who are over 60 than under 30. We all know the statistic. Are there concerns that you won't have enough officials in the fall if the concerns for the virus are still real and they're worried about standing on a sideline with two high school football teams? Are there concerns that we'll run out of officials?
At this time, no. Obviously, we are always looking to have more officials, and we need more officials. But our officials rep in a work session we had yesterday certified to one of our committees that she felt that the officials are in her area are biting at the bullet and are ready to go. They are disappointed about missing a spring. A lot of them are working recreational programs and just, they love sports. And that's one of the reasons people get into officiating, because they like sports, they like being around student athletes. But we also talked a little bit about sport to our sport medicine committee about that. And they said the ability to transfer in an outside activity from a student to an official would be highly unlikely. It would have to be a rare occurrence. So I think our people are well within their safety zone. And as importantly, it is an individual decision. If they don't feel uncomfortable, they shouldn't work and they don't need to work. That's an individual decision that I'm sure all our schools will work with.
Thank you. I appreciate the answers. And I will send you some phone numbers of parents who will expect a phone call on state
I thought you
playoffs.
like that one, huh?
That's good. That's good stuff.
Dr. Joby Foss, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Just a couple things from my athletic directors. Of course, we had a couple of incidents of schools shutting down their summer workouts. As a precautionary measure, we did have one school that had to quarantine some players. So the questions that are arising from our ADs are that if there is a situation, if the season were to start on time or games or contests were being played, you had a player test positive, if that creates almost a forfeit type situation in the eyes of the PIAA, or if you have to quarantine entire football teams or entire tennis teams and things of that nature. Are these things that the PIAA has discussed at all?
Yes, we have discussed them, and those answers are to be determined. Initially, one student is not considered to be a breakout. However, we have had some really quality discussion about regular season would be different than postseason, because postseason you're under a timing restraint. So the answers may be different, where in regular season, Joby, you could possibly even move a contest, postpone a contest, or even have it as a no contest. The other part of that is answers to be determined, because we wanted to kick the tires on that, get our district people back to their committees, talk to their schools a little bit on some of their feelings were before we came up with a statewide policy. So that, stay tuned on that one.
Thank you, Doctor. And finally, I mean, the one that's I'm getting peppered with a lot, of course, is any consideration. I know you've declined to go in further detail about any chances at all of flipping the fall sports season to the spring sports season and vice versa.
Not at this time. Our intent is to play fall as scheduled, even if it would end up in a shortened fashion or an altered fashion, because the flipping of those sports, there's a false narrative that the spring is going to be better than the fall, and there's no guarantee of that. It's also wrought with other concerns of overuse. If you flip those two and fall goes down to the spring, lose 2 in a row, that's inadequate. Also, you have the situation where you have football being played in the spring, and the chairman of the NFHS Sport Medicine Committee came out and said he would never recommend that, because it doesn't give a student that ends a season in June, early June, and starts up summer workouts in July, enough time to have his body heal as an adolescent, especially if there's any type of trauma or injury, or just the nature of the collision sport itself. So could it come to that? Possibly, but that's well down the road. Today, we're going to try to take the seasons in the order they come and try to get as much as we can per season at this time. That's the direction of the board.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Appreciate your answers.
Thank you, Joby.
Bob,
Dr. Lombardi, John Walker, LMP Lancaster Online. Thanks for taking time to chat with us here at the end. Question for you guys, and forgive me my ignorance on this. This sounds dumb, but so, okay, I know PIAA is ahead of running the state tournaments at the end of the season, but in regards to any possible suspensions or cancellations of fall sports during the regular season, is that within the PIAA's power to say, okay, we're suspending things, or are you leaving that to the individual districts and schools?
Well, John, please understand districts are PIAA. There's not two separate organizations.
Right.
The organization itself is encompassing all member schools, and we're a voluntary membership. So if a school didn't want to play a schedule, that would be their own individual decision. So you're not going to have pocketed decisions, I don't believe, unless there's some type of breakout or something that we're not aware of at this time. So that's an awful hypothetical that I can't answer.
Okay.
Mike Drago, I just wanted to follow up on Joby's last question regarding a potential flipping of fall and spring sports. I know you don't want to do that, but if you did, how much lead time would you need to give the schools to do that for teams to prepare?
Well, Mike, I don't know how to answer that except this. Where are you going to put track if you put it in the fall? Because we need a place to house 2,600 athletes in dorms, and all colleges at that time in November we're probably going to be in some type of session. So you start from Jump Street with the logistic problem. So I really, Mike, as much as I love you, brother, I'm not gonna get into the what if of it, because I think it's dangerous, because it gives people a feeling, and Allie alluded to it earlier. People are saying, oh, I heard this, I heard that. And the last thing we need now is to perpetuate rumors that aren't true. We're trying to give people an experience that was taken away from them March 13th. And Mike, you've covered sports for your whole life. You know how gut-wrenching that was for kids. It's gut-wrenching for us just to sit there on the sidelines and watch them. So I can't answer that at this time. But when the time comes, if that happens, I'll give you an answer.
I mean, it obviously would be a logistical nightmare. So my point is would that even be possible at this late date, less than a month away? I mean, you could dismiss it now and just take it totally off the table.
Well, again, I think it's one of those things that last resort is better than no resort. So, I don't know how I can answer to you any better that we certainly would not entertain it because of the logistical nightmare with it, as well as places to play. You're taking a kid throwing 90 miles an hour that he's used to going from bad weather into good weather, and for the most part, he really gets cranked up in weather in May and June when it's warm. And now you're going to put him out on the mound a week before Thanksgiving. You folks have lived in Pennsylvania long enough. Our northern interior, I grew up in the northeast corner. I remember one year, October 1st, we had 8 inches of snow. So, the weather plays into it. So it would be a last resort.
Dr. Lombardi, if I can kind of go on that note real fast, just one more from me. People are saying, same people who are calling us with the same rumors are saying they're going to follow what Maryland's doing, what Virginia's doing, because the Peace Act said this, they're going to do that. Can you address that? You're making your own decisions, it sounds like. Is that fair to say?
That we're not following Maryland. We certainly are not following New Jersey. Because those, and I say that tongue in cheek a little bit because a little levity, but those state associations are doing what their membership schools want. That's what they want. Our folks don't want that. Our folks have told our board members, and maybe going back to Mr. Walk's discussion about districts, the member schools elect those people to serve on our board and represent them. And they have told our people, we want as much as you possibly can now. We don't want to be the PSAC. We don't want to be the Big Five. We don't want to be the ACC or the NAIA or the JUCOs or Maryland or Virginia or New Mexico. And you know, all those states have other things. We want to do what's best for our kids in Pennsylvania with the best current information we have at the latest possible date to save as much activity as we possibly can. Allie, maybe you can assist us in getting that message out, because that's what people need to hear. They need to take a deep breath and give us the time to try to get this done, because you folks are out in the community. You see what's going on. You see softball tournaments every weekend, lacrosse, field hockey, soccer, they're all playing. How are they? Why do we have to shut down? They're playing. And if we shut down, does that just promote out of school activities over in school activities? When you win an AAU basketball championship, they're not waiting for you at your community with the fire truck. But if you win a PIAA baseball championship, they might pick you up at the stadium in the truck and drive you home, because it's important for community. And it's important for kids. You all guys know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Chris is laughing because he was on the fire truck. He was driving it.
This is the same thing, Dr. Lombardi, as it was in March. Wait as long as possible, have as much information as possible to make the best decision when it makes sense.
Yeah, and Allie, thank you, because I thought we held serve as long as we could, and then if you remember, we postponed 2 weeks, and we were hoping that we could get through something, because we were anticipating coming back and finishing the winter, and then seeing where we could get with the spring. And when the schools got shut down, our hand was forced. We didn't have an opportunity to do anything. But we were going to go to the end of the earth to try to get something in, because we know it's important for schools in their community. And ultimately, the student athlete. Look, none of us exist without kids playing sports. None of us have jobs. And we don't take that lightly. It's important to us, because all of us have a vested interest.
Chris Harlan.
Hey, Chris.
How would you describe your office's communication level with the governor's office at this point? And are you confident or comfortable that his office, that they're in favor of seeing high school sports in the fall?
I think the level of cooperation that we've had has been adequate, and we continue to work to get better. There's so many moving parts. I think it's very difficult for the Department of Health and the Department of Ed and the governor's office, with all the things and all the tentacles that they have. So I would say it's been fair, and we continue to work together to try to get the best information we can out. And as you well know, it's safety first, and that's a huge priority to them. And I'm sure that sometimes people are pounding on those folks that some people don't have the interest that we have in athletics, but we think it's an important extension of the school day and teaches a tremendous lot of educational lessons that you get in the classroom, but you really cement in an athletic or competitive situation, where it teaches you to be competitive in society and in your field.
Bob, I'm going to follow up on that, since this is Mark Bertig in Indiana again, since he mentioned Governor Wolf. Let's face it, this has become so political, everything. And yesterday, the Wall Street Journal had a very good, at least in my opinion, editorial on return to school and athletics. And they pointed out that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 30 children under the age of 16, I believe it was, have died. And as you know, we've heard, one death is too many. But 30 have died from COVID-15. In a typical year, 190 die from the flu. So how much will science guide you, you know, in some of these statistics as how the disease affects children versus adults? Because obviously you have the coaches and everybody to concern yourself with at the same time.
Well, Mark, that's a tough question to answer because we're not going to step out and be in conflict with the governor or the Department of Ed or the Department of Health. That's not the philosophy of our board. That's not the philosophy of our office. We have to work in concert together, almost no matter what, to provide the best opportunity we can for students. And being adversarial is not the right avenue to take here. Working in a cooperative, positive atmosphere, try to do your best for everyone is the way we have to go. I have no political stake to be made here. I'm just trying to be an advocate for student athletes and get them as much as they possibly can in their high school career. Because different than a lot of eligibilities, high school athletics is 4 years. You don't get a chance, there's no do-over. At the collegiate level, you can get a do-over here or there. At the professional level, you can get a do-over here or there. You don't have that opportunity in interscholastic athletics. So it's important for us to be advocates.
Dr. Lombardi, Mike Boydum from the Altoona Mirror.
Hi, Mike.
Is there any possibility that you would approach low contact sports like golf and tennis differently than the other sports? Like, you know, if you would have to cancel one sport, would there be a possibility you would still play the low contact sports?
Well, I don't think we're treating them differently, Mike. I think we're all treating them the same because we're going to try to get, as I said earlier, we're going to try to get as much as we can from everything. And I think I also said, you know, we might have more in one area or another. So yes, I think some of our sports even lend itself a little easier or better to perform, where they get them in. And you've named 2 individual sports that I think we are hopeful to get in. And outside sports, I think, have some real possibility. As everyone knows, the elephant in the room is football. And we all understand that. And we're working our darndest, even monitoring things that the NFL has done, to see how they're handling certain things. And all I can tell you is we're going to give our darn best efforts to try to get something in. And I know the football coaches appreciate that because I've had conversations with them and they've given me all sorts of recommendations, which is great. You know, you never know where a good idea is coming from.
Hey, Bob, Chris Harlan again. When the strategic planning committee met, did they put together a list of different type of scenarios or options that you guys could go to in the next month or so, if needed? Or is that something that if the the situation changes, you have to go back and start putting those together again?
That is part of our process right now, Chris. The dialogue we had around the table was, let's start looking at some doable alternate forms or postseason, those type of things. And let's take it slow and not get to a point where we're just going to start on this date and come hell or high water, that's what we're going to do. Because we think that's dangerous. Every day changes so much. I still think we're better July 15th than we were on June 15th because June 15th, we had, I think, maybe one school that opened their out-of-season workout. That was Hollidaysburg. Because on the 10th, the governor sort of said, hey, listen, you folks, you could take the shackles off a little bit. And that was a big day for us because July 1 was going to be the line of demarcation. And I you know better than I do and the people you talk, but they were grousing about that from the day it came out. So we're trying to grab as much of the gold as we can.
Bob, Bob Capasso, I want to piggyback on the question about, and thanks again for doing this for us. I want to piggyback on the question about sport by sport. Will there be a blanket go ahead, or will there be a sport by sport? And also, will there be an area by area? Say one district says they can play, another district says they cannot. Will you go sport by sport and area by area, or do you think this is going to be a blanket statement from the state, around the state?
Today, on July 15th, the feeling of the board is it's almost school by school. You get as much as you possibly can. If you're allowed to play, play. You're allowed to play, play. And you can play and you can do it in a safe environment, play. So that's the best way I can answer it, Bob. I wouldn't say it's district by district. I don't think it's more detailed than that. It's school by school. And, you know, with some of our schools, the way they're set up with IUs and all that type of thing, it might be county by county, but that's to be determined.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Bob, what would it take for the PIAA to cancel or delay the start of the fall season? You know, is there certain numbers? Is there certain, you know, guidance from Wolf or whatever? I mean, I haven't really heard anything about what the actual bar would be to cross.
I don't have that answer for you because I don't know what they're going to tell us. If they close down schools, I think that's a no-brainer. So, absent closing schools, if we have the ability that we have now to do what we have to do now, we're going to proceed and try to get as much in. Like I said, the out-of-school programs are playing. Why can't we? Our coaches are trained. They're educated. They have concussion, cardiac backgrounds, clearances. They have background clearances. They're safer than some of the people that you may be putting your daughter in front of at a recreational program. And you have recourse because you don't know who those people are and you're not have to pay for it. So.
Bob, Chris Harlan again. With today's announcement, would you be willing to say that it's probably more likely that if there were a shutdown order, it would come from the governor's office and not the PIAA at this point? Would you be willing to say that with where we stand today, that it's more likely to come from the governor?
Chris, would you say that again? I lost you.
No problem. I said, with the statement you guys put out today, would you say it's more likely that if a shutdown order came, it would come from the governor's office and relate to schools rather than just the PIAA?
At this time in July, yes. Because I think you heard loud and clear from the board, we want to grab as much as we can. We want to get kids moving. We want kids to be kids. We want them to do what they like to do. And heck, you've seen it. I'm not telling any of you folks, you're out there in the community, you see it. And it's important. And like I said, it's important for us to be advocates for them. So we would hope that the governor's office and the Department of Health and the Department of Ed would look very close at the whole school environment so that we don't shut down without giving everybody full consideration.
Can I ask you one question that doesn't include this?
Sure.
You guys talked about the co-op rule today and about changing up the requirements for that co-op. I didn't see anything about contiguous districts and about whether they could do that. Was that discussed, and where does that stand at this point?
Well, that was a separate provision of the co-op, and that's still in effect, Chris. But I think this was really trying to hone in on some of the cases that we have where schools have grown. And one of the suggestions was, hey, listen, if they're that big and they're willing not to play in postseason, what's the competitive advantage? There is none. So the underlying philosophy there is, which is the co-op philosophy, is to give people opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. And I'm not going to give you the old history lesson, but you know, I think you've seen enough of those, and the situations where somebody can't meet with a school that's contiguous, that's small, but they ask all the surrounding schools, they say no. Does it give us the opportunity to expand on that so that we still give those students opportunities? And I thought Mike Hawkins asked a great question that, hey, listen, if it's for team, do individuals, if you have a kid that's a pole vaulter, is a once in a lifetime child, could he qualify? And I think you heard from the board, yes, this is that there's not a competitive advantage there because the co-op didn't exist for this one kid to develop to be a superstar. It just give them the opportunity to go through the standards. And we have qualifying standards with all those sports. That I thought you can treat one a little different than the other. What is it?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is a question I have just from the meeting today. The next meeting you're talking about is August 29th?
Just, hey, George, just a second.
Sure.
Okay, George, what you got?
Okay, the next meeting you're talking about is August 29th?
Yes.
And if I heard that correctly, you're going to try and have the fall steering committee meetings before that meeting?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, that's what I wanted to make sure of. So that'll be before the 29th. And are you still holding any of the competition committee meetings before the regular board meeting?
There has not been a competition committee meeting scheduled. I think that's on pause. I think that there's more priority here at this time. We have time to get to that.
Okay, no, so I wondered if there was going to be or not. Thank you.
I think President Majikis wants to see us get some guidelines that we per sport that may be like best practices in front of the steering committee, get their information to get back to the board, and then we can put it out for distribution.
Thank you.
Bob, August or July 29th?
July 29th.
July 29th, because I think you just asked August. So it's July 29th.
It's July 29th, and the reason being is we want to meet before season starts, practice starts.
Okay. Yeah, because I think he mentioned August. I wanted to make sure we had the right month.
Yep. Okay.
Hey, Bob, lastly from me, any thoughts on the wrestling rule? The reduction on the weight classes, that's now official. Your take on that decision and what does that do for the sport of wrestling?
Well, I think it's the right move. It's been a 3-year process, Chris. You know that, and the Coaches Association is fully supportive of this, and they wanted it. They voted for it repeatedly, and we think that. I'll be candid with you. I'm disappointed at some of the other levels where we tried to get this addressed. It wasn't addressed through their process, and things happened, and I understand that. But to wait 5 years to get a change that our people have been clamoring for 3, I think is counterproductive to the young people that are wrestling, especially when we're going and putting them in weight classes that they fulfilling. And again, the support of the Coaches Association and the Sport Medicine Committee was huge, and they think that this is the right thing to do. And I agree, and the board agrees.
Any more time? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I've just got back in here. I'm sorry if you addressed this already. For positive tests, have we talked at all about what the protocol is if there is one positive test on a team? What does that mean for that team moving forward until, well, let's go back a step. A guy doesn't know if he's sick or not. He tells the coach, I don't feel well, I'm going to take a test tomorrow. There's 48 hours before he gets the answer. What happens in that in-between time?
That would be handled by the local school health and safety program that they have already had to have approved by their local board name.
In terms of how many players are contact traced to that player, things like that?
It has to be all spelled out in the health and safety plan.
And those have not been ratified at this point, as far as you know?
And I think Nathan, we're talking two different languages all of a sudden.
Okay.
No school can start out of season workouts without a health and safety plan that has been developed by the school and put in front of their governing board or school board and approved and posted on their website. So
I hear what you're saying. I just don't think that we've addressed that specifically, that scenario for a lot of these schools when it comes to actually testing and what you do while you're waiting for test results and how many people that could affect. So I guess you're saying there's a local.
We would have to address that in the health and safety plan. That's
individually. Okay.
Folks, I don't have anything else. I think we probably kicked it pretty good. I appreciate your time.
I got one question for you, Bob, if you don't mind.
Yes, Nick.
What's the end goal of reducing the number of weight classes? What's the PIAA hoping to accomplish by going back to 13?
Stop the huge number of forfeits that we have in dual meets. And I think last year the number was in 93% of our wrestling matches we had a forfeit. That's ridiculous. That means you're not having kids fulfill weight classes. You got too many. So I think it's important that we follow the lead of the Wrestling Steering Committee, the Coaches Association, and provide them the opportunities they want at 13.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mick.
Doctor, thank you very much for your cooperation today. Best of luck.
Yep. Thanks, Joe. Everyone,
Thanks, Bob.
appreciate it. I hope
Thank you very
we
much.
got everything for you. If you didn't, you know where we are. Yell at us. We'll be glad to answer.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.